I'm holding a Gibson F5 master model mandolin, signed and dated by Gibson acoustic engineer Lloyd Lord, 1923. Next to me is a Gibson L5 guitar, master model, made early in the year 1929. Whereas this has a Lohr signature label in addition to the master model label, this one does not, because Lohr left Gibson at the end of 1924. Lohr had been brought into Gibson by company president Lewis Williams because mandolin sales, along with sales of other mandolin family instruments, were plummeting. Gibson's early success was based primarily on their mandolins. In fact, the name of the company originally was Gibson Mandolin-Guitar Company. Mandolin orchestras were very popular from turn of the century, 1900, through the end of World War I. But World War I changed market conditions, public attitudes, technology, almost everything. And it was a remarkable change. The war caused horrors never known before. And people came back scarred. And even those who hadn't been to war wanted something different. The Edwardian era type music that mandolin orchestras were so known for was over. People wanted something like up-tempo Dixieland and jazz. And the mandolin orchestras didn't do it. The mandolin is tuned like a violin. And in the family was also the mandola, a bit bigger, tuned like a viola, and larger yet, mandocello, such as this Gibson K4 model here. This was made in 1914, before the advent of the master models. And you note that the K4 and the F4 mandolin here look different from this. What Lohr introduced, along with the rest of the Gibson team working with him, was F-holes, parallel tone bars, a bridge placed in the middle of the F-holes, which necessitated a longer neck. Quite a different instrument from this, with one transverse brace and a shorter neck. This was supposed to be the ultimate mandolin, which would kickstart sales. Unfortunately, in some ways, it was like introducing the ultimate buggy whip after the invention of the automobile. People just didn't care how good a mandolin was. They didn't want it. And along with that, they didn't want mandolas or mandocellos either. The guitar, which was introduced along with the Lohr Master Model series, was in some ways an afterthought. Gibson really didn't do all that much with guitars compared to mandolins at the time, and I'm not sure they knew what people would do with this. It was supposed to be a great guitar, and by God, it is a great guitar. But there really wasn't guitar music of the type we associate with F-hole guitars in the early 1920s when this instrument was designed. Effectively, we can say that the F5 mandolin was introduced too late for bluegrass music. Screw up.
I can express that.
The F5 mandolin was introduced too late for classical music and too early for bluegrass music. Bill Monroe bought his 1923 F5 in the early 1940s in a barber shop in Florida for $125 and discovered that you could do all kinds of things on this that you could not do on any other mandolin. When he played with the Monroe brothers, he was playing a mid-1930s F7. It had F-holes, but it had a shorter neck, and it certainly didn't have the power or the tone of an F5. And when he learned to play, there are photos of him with an A model with a simple pear-shaped body and an oval hole like you see on these. But when Bill Monroe got his F5, he discovered you could do closed chords and play chopped rhythm. You could drive a 5-piece band with a mandolin, and you could play lead as well, where you could be heard right on up over banjo and bass and fiddle, and that you could have guitar, banjo, mandolin, bass, 5-piece band, and play mandolin as the lead instrument and as a rhythm instrument to drive a band. And this was a major revelation. But Lohr and the designers who worked with him didn't have that in mind. They were thinking of the ultimate classical mandolin. But it is an interesting irony that often enough instruments end up being used for something entirely different than the original designer ever dreamed of. It's true not only of the F5 mandolin, it's true also of the L5 guitar. They didn't envision great players like Eddie Lang, who would come along in the 20s and start playing orchestral rhythm and lead. Lang started out playing an oval hole guitar, an L4 model with an oval hole like this. But later, during the 20s, he got an L5 similar to this one, and slightly later yet, he had an L5 with block inlays on the fingerboard, such as would have been made no earlier than late 1929. Lang died in 1933, but even though he was young, barely over 30 when he died, he was the father of modern orchestral jazz and orchestral rhythm guitar. And players after him learned a great deal and copied much of his technique and then expanded upon it. The L5 is effectively the granddaddy of all F-hole guitars that followed. So the Super 400 back behind me is a direct descendant of this L5. And even electric guitars with hollow bodies and F-holes are directly descended from the L5. Much the same can be said even for electric guitars. When Leo Fender designed the Broadcaster, which later morphed into the Telecaster or the Stratocaster, they were not envisioning people like Roy Buchanan or Jimi Hendrix. But instruments such as this, which are superb in quality, have gone on to change the world. They were financial failures for Gibson when they were new, because the company only makes money when they're brand new. They don't want to see it again, or it's a warranty problem. Gibson lost a great deal of money, and it greatly impacted their viability, resulting in Lewis Williams and Lloyd Lohr both leaving. But these have gone on to be some of the finest instruments ever known and have become great collector's items that will remain so for generations to come.